Hi everyone, my name is Austin Cott. I am a second grade teacher in the general education classroom. I chose to do my project on solving math word problems and teaching students a strategy to solve story problems. This project was done with students that have a learning disability in the area of mathematics. So, thinking about why is problem solving important? Some of the research that I found is that problem solving represents the foundation of all mathematical activities. Frequently, these activities have been qualified as very difficult, complex, and distressing for learners, and especially when they face math word problem solving. And I could even say, as a teacher, it can be a little stressful as what is the best way to teach students because they are hard. And giving these students a strategy, I think, is a great way. So I wanted to find out what did research say and what's the best way to teach students how to solve story problems. Another piece of research that I found talks about an attack strategy, and what that is, it's an easy to remember series of steps that students use to guide their approach in solving word problems. A helpful attack strategy, it can go across grade levels, and then researchers have determined that students' use of an attack strategy is effective for improving word problem performance. One other piece of information that that I found was the use of mnemonics that research didn't really show. I mean, it can be helpful, but I didn't find research that showed that that actually is research-based helpful. That as long as you are continually practicing and memorizing the steps of your attack strategy, that's the main and most important part. So the strategy that I taught, as you can see, it's read the problem, reread the problem, find numbers and math words, solve the problem, and then add the label. And then here I have a quick video of what those steps are. All right, yesterday we learned our problem solving strategy. So let's go through one more time. Our first step when we get a problem solving is read the problem. Step number two, reread the problem. Let's say step number three together. Find numbers and math words. Number four, solve the problem. And our last step, add the label. So as you can see, there is a visual there for students to see. That was actually during my second lesson. So students had been introduced to those steps in the previous lesson, so they were a little bit more familiar with them. But the first time, they were very clearly went through. We discussed what each step was. Why was that step important? So that the students, it kind of set them up for success before they even got the story problem in front of them. We went through each and every step and discussed, we're going to read the problem. We want to reread the problem. We want to make sure that we didn't miss any important information. We go through, we find those math words, those math numbers. We mark them, whether that's circling, underlining, highlighting. We then discussed about how do we solve the problem. There's different strategies that we can use for that. And then lastly, adding the label. So going back into the problem and figuring out what would the label be. So as far as the lessons went, and I talked a little bit about it, it would be step-by-step instruction used initially. So my first lesson was very, very basic. We went through each and every step. I had a little marker board paper as well that I marked as we went through that. So we read the problem together and I pointed to each word. We talked about rereading the problem so that we didn't miss any important information. I went through and I modeled finding the important math words and information and circling those very clearly. And then we talked about strategies to solve the problem. And then I modeled how do you go back and find out what would be the appropriate label for that. So lots of think alouds were used to solve those problems. And then, like I said initially, lots of modeling. It was a lot of me doing it. Gradually, as the lessons went on, though, students were doing that more. So the first step, reading the problem, and another piece of research talks about variations in attack strategies. But the first part of the word problem solving across all attack strategies is a thorough reading of the problem. The problems that I was doing with these second graders were pretty basic because I wanted the main focus on solving or on the attack strategy. But we also wanted to make sure that they are reading the problem. They're not missing any information. So that's why I think it's really important, especially at this age, that they read the problem 2 times. So the first time they go through it, whether you do it together or they do it individually or however you want to do it, but making sure that they have a good, clear understanding of what that problem is telling them and what that problem is asking them. And then I have a video of the students reading the problem.
Strategy is right up here. First one is to read the problem. Say it with me. So let's read this problem. Say again. I am going to plant my garden today. I have 6 to All right, so step number 1 again is read the problem. We did it. Number 2 is reread the problem. So the reason that we would want to read the problem is that we don't want to miss anything important. Right, we want to make sure that we read all of the information and don't forget anything. So, step number 2 is read the problem. Let's go through it. I am going to plant my garden today. I have 11 roses and 6 tulips. How many total flowers do I have? Awesome.
So as you can see there, we were very slowly going through. We were reading the problem, and then we went through and we reread the problem. That was the first lesson. That was actually the second story problem that we went to. So as the students were starting to get a little more involved, and that responsibility was starting to go more on them. But I think it was really important that we went through. I reminded them of the steps. I used the visual that we read the problem, we go back and we reread the problem to make sure we have a really good understanding of what exactly does that problem tell us and what is it asking us. And then as problems continue to get more difficult, more information is in those problems, and we're kind of weeding out some of that information that maybe we don't need to solve the problem. That could be a point for future lessons. But for right now, as we're just getting our hands on this strategy, getting the idea of reading the problem, rereading the problem. And I talked a little bit about this, but initially in the videos that you saw, it was very, very structured. I was doing a lot of the teaching, a lot of the modeling. But as they continued to get more story problems and as the lessons progressed, more responsibility was shifted on the students. And by the end of the second lesson that we did, students actually got their own sheet of paper and they went through the problem solving on their own and the steps. I was still there though, so if they did run into problems, I was there to correct and help as necessary. But lots of that responsibility towards the end of these lessons was shifted on the students for them to practice this, because the ultimate goal is for them to use these strategies when they're not right next to a teacher. So when they are solving story problems, maybe on a more individual basis, are they using this strategy? And then this is just a picture of one of those story problems that I gave them. So you can see that this was a problem. They read it 2 times. They went through, they circled the important information. They solved it, so they used the strategy of drawing a picture here. And then you can see that they also added that label. And that was the one that they did on their own. So you can see that they went through the different steps of our story problem strategy.